Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Social Media News Live. I am so glad you are here with us. It's going to be a fun show. We've had Cassie on before, so I think like a year ago she was on the show, but I have seen Cassie speak many times at Momentum. I saw her speak at PodFest. She is amazing. So this is going to be a fun show. She is the host of the Marketing Happy Hour, which is an amazing podcast. So make sure you guys check that out. We'll be talking about that later on in the show as well. But this is going to be a fun one. So if you struggle with LinkedIn like I do, this is the show for you. Ask your questions down below because we'll try to pull up as many of those as possible during the show. The amazing Connor Brown, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm great. It's St. Patty's Day weekend. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
that's right. I'm surprised you're even here. It's amazing that we got Connor in here. We've got the amazing Rich Graham saying, hey, 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 like hey as in horses, but I'll take it. And we've got Dustin Stout probably waving from Magi. Look at him coming in with the company logo. And we've got our friend Amy Keys saying, happy Friday, friends. Amy is another Momentum attendee who has heard Cassie before. So that's probably why she's joining in. She's seen Connor and I all the time. But Cassie, that's what's important. So this is going to be fun. Cassie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm honored to be here yet again with you two. It's always fun to see you guys. Have a great time with you both. So looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah. So we're going to go right into it. Connor, if you're ready, I'm going to hit go on the podcast machine and we will get started. Hello, folks. Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not.
And I'm Connor Brown, and this is the show that keeps you up to date on what's happening in the world of social media and more.
You ever found yourself wondering what it really takes to make LinkedIn work for you? Maybe you're looking for ways to turn connections into real opportunities. Or maybe you're trying to figure out how to create content that actually gets engagement. If any of that sounds like it's you, you are in the right place because this week we're excited to welcome someone who knows LinkedIn inside and out. Cassie Tucker has mastered the art of personal branding, networking, and content strategy on the platform, and she's here to share her best tips. So sit back, clear your schedule, clear your mind, and get ready for this week's episode of Social Media News Live. Cassie, so glad you're back with us today. This is going to be fun.
I am so grateful to be back. Thank you both for having me.
And if you don't know who Cassie is, you should, because Cassie is awesome. She is an independent marketing strategy consultant who helps her clients refine their messaging and communicate their value to potential customers across digital channels. As an entrepreneur, she combines her work in marketing and her experience as a former Disney cast member, just like me, to make magic for her clients. Through her work as the host of the Marketing Happy Hour podcast, she is committed to empowering and encouraging young professionals on their career journeys. Additionally, Cassie is the co-host of podcasts for Universal Studios and the Leadership Crucible Foundation. Cassie, we're so excited to have you back, especially for two dudes who need LinkedIn help. That's for sure.
That is right. That is right.
Yes.
We're so excited to have Cassie here, but we also are excited of our sponsors, Ecamm. You can find out more about them at ecamm.com/Jeff. Find out more and use code Jeff15 to save 15% on your first purchase. By the way, they just rolled out a new version. It's amazing. They've got animations. They've got really cool stuff. So if you haven't tried Ecamm yet, make sure you go to ecamm.com/Jeff. And I do want another shout out to our friend Dustin. He says, yep, Dustin here, working from his brand new YouTube channel. So do me a favor and go over there. Dustin's a big supporter of the show. Give him a follow over there on YouTube. Just look for Magi. That's Magai, and check him out. So
also, George pointed out something very important I totally missed. Happy Pie Day to both of you as well.
Oh,
Oh,
now I need some
amazing.
pie. Thanks, Connor. Great. That's all I need. All right, so we're going to talk about LinkedIn all today. Once again, if you're watching, ask your questions because we want to make the show all about you. But Cassie, you know, you've emphasized the importance of your profile optimization on LinkedIn. So just starting from the beginning, what are some key elements that a standout LinkedIn profile needs to have?
Yeah, so there's quite a few different elements. I would say even the foundational work to do prior to updating your profile is just understanding what is your goal with your presence on LinkedIn. Is it to secure a new job? Is it to build your personal brand? Like, what are you looking to overall achieve with the platform? And then making sure that your messaging is aligned and clear throughout your profile. So there's several different sections that you can update and optimize. One of them being your headline. So one of the first things that people see when they're searching on the platform looking for people relevant to maybe the experience or the services or what have you that you provide is your headline, your name, and your profile photo. So that headline is a really great spot to capture attention quickly. So really just answering the question, why you? Why should someone follow you? What do you do? How do you serve? What is that authority space that you're in? And so that's a section that I always recommend looking at. And then moving further down is your about section. This is a place where you can fill in your bio, tell your story. How have you impacted businesses or brands that you've worked for in the past? What's your story as it's relevant to your authority you're looking to build? And then further down is that experience section. So this is kind of like your resume. It's where you can fill in your past roles and things that you're currently doing and have done in the past. And so making sure that that's really built out and robust is really important. Making sure everything is very clear, you have data, some of those actions that you've taken in your past experiences, the way that you've impacted those organizations. And in those sections, you can also fill in media. So any sort of links to articles or press that you've received to further emphasize your authority in those positions is really important to include those as well. And then even further down, there's different sections like skills and recommendations where you can ask for referrals and testimonials. So I always recommend, whether you have a current presence on the platform or you're just getting started, just go through and make sure every single section is filled out, because the more keywords, the more information, the more details about, again, what you do, how you serve you have on there, the more people will buy into that and have a clearer picture of who you are as a professional.
So a follow-up question to that, Cassie, is how custom can you make your profile? Like, I can't. It used to be you could actually, put things ahead of the other, like your skills up front and all that stuff. Is it still that way? And if so, what do you recommend to have people customize it, like best practices kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's not as structured that way anymore. It kind of has this set flow that it
Okay.
runs with. But one thing I do want to mention too is there's a lot of visual elements that you can customize. So we do have that hero banner at the top of our profiles, and then we have a profile image. That hero banner is a really great place to further emphasize again what you do. Maybe have a photo if you're a speaker. Put a photo of you speaking up there. Maybe add some text that again emphasizes who you are. And so that's kind of a custom element there. And then the media is custom. There's different elements and pinned posts that you can add that customizes your profile further. But for the most part, a lot of those sections, if you have creator mode turned on, that's a little bit more customized as well. But for the most part, some of those main sections are pretty set in their place, but the way that you use them is adaptable to you.
Gotcha.
And a follow up to that, the creator mode, Cassie, it's if you're being a LinkedIn creator, right? Not if you're just you got it. You brand yourself as a
Correct.
creator.
Yeah. Great question.
I think that kind of brings in this next thing we want to talk about, which is balancing professionalism, but you're also your own personality, especially when you're posting or trying to be a LinkedIn creator, like we were talking about. I think, the good rule of thumb is that LinkedIn is not Facebook professional, right? Like, we don't need everything. It has to serve a purpose, but it also has to showcase your personality so that people are attracted to what you're doing, like any other social media platform. I think the one thing that I'm always hesitant with is like the new kind of shorts that they're doing, right? You can show your personality in that, but you don't want to go overtly and have it be TikTok all of a sudden, because you still want that professional aura. So Cassie, how do you think users can effectively, incorporate their personality, incorporate their personal brand, but then still maintaining professionalism on LinkedIn?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Connor, I think one of the biggest things to create that human to human connection is the video element. So showing your face, allowing people to hear you, see you, that's going to strengthen that connection. But I think ultimately, when you're deciding what to post, it's asking yourself, why am I posting this? What's your intention behind it? Most likely, just a photo of your dog is probably not going to have the best intention on the platform. It's just not for that. But let's say you learn a lesson from your dog that can be applied for to business, for example. There's ways to infuse those personal updates and that personality and tie it back to your ultimate goal with the platform. So that's why I mentioned earlier, making sure you have established, what am I looking to do? How am I looking to build authority? What are the areas that I want to build authority in? And chances are there's a lot of personal tie-ins that you can include in your posts. And I think too, ultimately, it's that trust factor. So peeling the curtain back a little bit on your life and who you are as a human being outside of work even is going to strengthen that connection and help you build relationships, but making sure it has intention tying back to your ultimate goal with the platform. And chances are you can get kind of creative with that and infuse a lot of that personal content on the platform as well, even if it feels like maybe it doesn't fit at the beginning.
Right. That's a good point. I want to jump back to what you said a little bit about visuals, because that's what I love, is the visuals and creating, content, and visuals are crucial on LinkedIn. And I want to talk about the profile photo specifically, because and I'm a big into AI. Like, we did a great, if you haven't looked at Instagram, great AI thing with Cassie promoting the show. But I see a lot of people using AI to create these profile photos, and I don't like them, because I've gone to conferences and went, whoa, that ain't you anymore. Like, it's like you haven't had not that many wrinkles since high school. So like, it's okay to show your age. So what do you tell people, and what kind of like quality photos they need on LinkedIn for even their banner images and also their profile photo?
Yeah. So speaking to profile photo first, again, I mentioned when someone's searching for pages relevant to what you do, that's often your first impression with a person. And so it's your name, it's that headline, and then it's the profile image as well. So thinking about when you first meet someone in person, when you go to meet someone, it's probably not advantageous to look like you don't want to be there, to be frowning or whatever. So the biggest thing I would say is make sure that headshot is clear, make sure you're smiling, make sure you look approachable. And so that's a best practice. And that goes back to just having fresh headshots too. Jeff, you mentioned making sure everything's up to date. And like, if someone does go to meet you in person after following you on LinkedIn, is there consistency there?
Right.
And so that's kind of, again, setting the tone for everything. And you want it to be recognizable as well. So if there's a way to kind of spin it, whether it's a color that you're wearing or a background or whatever that ties into your brand even further, have fun with that. And then that header image is a place to showcase your personality and your brand even further. So maybe you include a logo, or you include, again, a short statement of what you do and who you are, because that also, when someone first lands on your profile, that's one of the first things they're going to see when they jump even further into your page. And so making sure that creates that connection there. But I think overall quality is important, but also just clarity of image, making sure it's close up, nothing too distracting, and it's pretty straightforward.
Awesome.
Let's talk a little bit more about the headline too, because I know that that's such an emphasis, and we talked about the importance of that, especially as you're scrolling. One of the first things you see, and even a very searchable sort of thing that people can kind of find you via. A lot of people struggle with that, Cassie, because I think it's like back in the days when Twitter was 160 characters or whatever. You're like, how do I fit a tweet? I have so much I have to say, and it's truncated like that, right? So I feel like a lot of people just kind of default to what they're doing now and put almost their job title in it. Or they also say things like passionate about, and are we really passionate about B2B sales? I don't know, right? But maybe we're an expert in it, right? And we put that in. So what tips do you have for helping people, craft that headline that not only introduces them, but kind of attracts the right opportunities and the right people to find them?
Yeah. So I think, again, this goes back to what is your intention with the platform, right? Like, I'm going to say that a lot just because that helps to define a lot of these different elements of your profile. And the other thing to do a little bit of research in is LinkedIn is very keyword focused. So, like the other platforms like Instagram, TikTok, there's SEO built into the platform. So, thinking about what are some of those keywords that if someone is looking for something that you provide, making sure that you're going to show up for those searches. And so, there's a kind of twofold element. I always recommend having some sort of statement about what you do. So if you're a travel planner, include that, but also what is the impact that you're making with the people that you work with. And there's a number of different ways to outline your headline. One thing that you could do is just have a short statement. We talk all the time in marketing about those I help statements. So I help X, who your audience is, do XYZ so they can whatever that transformation is. So that's one statement that you can include in there in your headline. But ultimately, what do you do? Who are you? How do you serve? And maybe a short statement about the impact or the authority that you have in your space. And so that's kind of your hook for your profile. So you want to tell people why they should be following you and what kind of content you provide and who you are as a professional. And so that is the statement that's really going to make an impact quickly. And so making sure that you're infusing those different elements, and don't be afraid to test different headlines and see what resonates and switch it up on a regular basis. I always recommend do a profile audit about once a quarter or so. Make sure your bio's up to date, all of your information is up to date, your media, all the links that you have included in there, and your headline is one of them. Just kind of test, refresh, and see how it lands.
Awesome. So this is, once again, I love the show because it's almost like free consulting for me. But one of the questions I wanted to ask is like, okay, if somebody is watching the show or listening to this podcast and they want to refresh their LinkedIn presence, what quick updates would you recommend that they make right now to improve their profile?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, our bios get outdated very quickly. So again, whether it's once a quarter, twice a year, whatever it is, making sure not only on your LinkedIn, but really everywhere that you have your bio listed, make sure your experience is up to date. The messaging that you're trying to put out there into the world is up to date. And so that's a big one. I would just say go through the different touch points of your profile, making sure everything is clear. Does it make sense to the person that you're trying to attract? Is it straightforward? Is it engaging? And so those are some of the questions that you can ask. Also, don't be afraid to show your profile to a trusted connection or friend and say, hey, is everything that's on here, is this clear? Because chances are a lot of times, like what I think is clear may not be clear to anyone else. And so kind of getting out of our own way and accepting feedback from other people, just because the goal is to attract and build authority and build your reach, right? So we want to make sure that people out there are willing to engage with that and connect with your profile. So that's the biggest thing. Updated headshots on a regular basis. I mentioned the media section of your experiences too. So if you have any new press hits that you received or any new campaigns that you want to promote, refresh those as well. And that also provides a fresh new experience to your followers as they visit your profile over time, making sure you have that up-to-date information and telling the most accurate, clear story.
Awesome. Cassie, and this is, and Connor too, anybody who is watching, because I want to know, is there any sort of tool or plugin that you could use to update those things automatically? Because like when new YouTube videos come out, you would like them to come and put them on your profile or whatever. Do you know of anything other than having to do that manual? Is there a tool that can do that for you?
Oh, that's a good question. To be honest, I am not sure.
I would love that. Somebody
but
make that. Dustin, make that for us. Come on. What are you doing?
I'm like, if anyone else knows about that, please let me know.
Yeah.
I think you can do like, it'll be pretty generic, but I think you can do it through Zapier.
Okay.
To a LinkedIn.
Because that's the biggest thing for me is like, because we're putting out a show each week, I just don't go in there and update it. I know I could have a VA or somebody do that. I just don't think about it. But I would love to have, I'll look that up, Connor, because that's a great suggestion because I would like to keep that up to date.
Yeah. The other thing I tell people to do too, and I love Zapier's an amazing tool. So highly recommend just getting in there, period, and messing with it.
Right.
But the other thing I recommend people doing, this is for Instagram as well, but have like a links kind of landing page built on your website versus using like a link tree or whatever, or posting direct links into your bio or your media sections. You can kind of get creative with that too. And so you're only refreshing that content in one spot versus multiple spots. But I'm going to look into using Zapier for some of those automations too.
Yeah.
It's a great
That would be
idea.
great. Mhm.
Yeah.
We were talking a bit about headshots and the importance of, it being true to you. And Dustin brings up a great point. He said previously the excuse was, I haven't had time to go to a photographer, but with custom AI models, it's much easier to update your headshots. But then he goes on to say, should always be an accurate headshot. Though I know he's done a lot of explaining about using Flux in the Magi community on Facebook. And those are really, really good for taking like what you look like currently, right, and putting it into a headshot format. So to his point, we can use these models, but we just want to make sure, the Jeff C model actually has that full beard with all the
It's funny because there is something going around that I'll get because I took it like it was like for the WordPress like icon, and it's like old, like it's no beard, it's baby Jeff. Yeah, it's crazy looking. Yeah,
it is terrifying. We've talked about laying the foundation of building our profile, right? And that's when people either find us, right, or they're searching for us, or they see a post that we did, and then they land on the profile. And we want to make sure that's all up to date, accurate, all that stuff. But then putting ourselves out there, once we have our foundation, we want to create good content. We want to formulate a strategy, and we want to post things on the platform that are going to attract the right people. We've talked a lot about posting strategically, and Cassie, you've shared, why is it? Why are you posting this? What are you doing? What do you think, just in general, types of content that perform the best for people that are just trying to build their credibility, build their engagement? And then what's kind of your strategy when it comes to posting on LinkedIn itself?
Yeah. So LinkedIn has a number of different ways that we can post. Nowadays, there's so many different formats available to us and tools, which is awesome. But I know it also leads to this overwhelm of what should I be posting and when and how should I be sharing? I think the biggest thing that I would recommend starting with is just simply what are you learning recently?
Yeah.
What is something that came to mind that you can kind of share a learning on? Or what is something you achieved recently and how did you achieve it? And so sharing kind of those actionable strategies tied to your story or recent learnings. And then with that too, it makes it a lot easier to batch or create content. If you just create this record of things that come to mind as you're driving, don't write it down while you're driving, but
right.
You're at a red light or you're stopped, write it down if something comes to mind. You're in the shower. When you get out of the shower, write it down. So you have this bank of content that you can pull from. But storytelling always works. I mean, storytelling in general on any platform, that's always the way to go. And so just engaging people that way, relatable content. So thinking again about the people that you are trying to speak to, who's your audience, and what would connect with them. What is something that you face that your audience may be facing, and how can you tell a story or solve a problem through that? One-liners always work well on the platform, kind of those hot takes. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of people just post opinionated content and what they think about something, and that generates conversations. Kind of this blog style, again, storytelling format content. Images, no images, text only posts do really well on the platform as well. But I think the biggest thing is have some sort of clear direction as to why you're posting. As I already mentioned, what is the why behind the specific post, and what is maybe an action that you'd want someone to take after reading that content? So make sure you have a very clear direction. You want your content to be focused, and that helps to drive engagement, especially if someone has just one clear focus or thing or theme that they're thinking about, and they can kind of start to engage with that in that way. So I would say ultimately just test, try different things. But I think too, again, going back to foundational principles of building your presence on LinkedIn, not only thinking about why you're on the platform, why you're posting what you're posting, but have kind of these different content buckets or themes that you would want to post around. And that goes back to your own personal exposure and your own personal story, but also, again, who are you speaking to? What would be relevant and engaging to them? And what is some of the content that you can share that helps to spark a conversation or showcase your authority around a given theme or topic?
That's really, really good. Speaking of content, the different types of content, Gary has a great question. He goes, wasn't LinkedIn going to introduce a carousel banner on profiles? So do you know anything about that? I'm not sure about that, but I would love to know more if you know anything, Cassie.
So there is a section where, and I would have to understand a little bit further about what you're specifically speaking to, but there is a section where you can pin posts to the top of your profile, and it kind of looks like a carousel. You can click through them. And so I always recommend to people pin content that clearly tells your story or introduces yourself for people first landing on your profile. But that's really the biggest thing that I can recall in terms of carousel. But I'll have to keep my eyes peeled. I haven't seen anything other than that so far.
Yeah, I know that I saw something about it, but I haven't played with it either. So Gary says the banner was for premium members only. Well, I'm not a premium member. That's why I'm not in the elite class like Gary Stockton is. So, but yeah, if Gary, if you find out more, I'd love to know, because that would be something that might make me go to premium member if you could do something like that. So very cool.
I know. And I will say too, kind of on that, that's a really great point, just to note that, and this goes with any social media platform. If a platform releases a new feature, I highly recommend using it and using it as quickly as possible, because chances are those platforms want us to be using those new features. And they, a lot of times, I no guarantee around this, but a lot of times they will reward users for jumping on those platform features. And so with something like that, for example, I always recommend test it, try it out, use it for a bit, see if it resonates with your audience, see if it works for you, and then you can always pivot from there.
Awesome.
What about, Cassie, the types of content or post styles or things like that you like to post, that not only do you see like good engagement on your profile for it, but you just enjoy creating that style of content? Is there any ones in particular that you gravitate towards more for your personal brand?
Yeah, so I would say for me, storytelling is one of my favorite things to post on the platform. I mean, I love copywriting. So I love writing emails, I love long form pieces of content. And so anything where I can kind of take a personal thing that I maybe experienced, even if it's not particularly relevant. Like, I'll give you an example. Last year, and maybe this sounds kind of silly, but I went to the Taylor Swift concert, the Eras Tour, and I walked away from the Eras Tour and I'm like, I actually learned a lot about business and marketing through this concert, like, honestly. And so I wrote a post speaking to that and sharing what I learned. And a lot of people connected with that because they're like, oh, I've never thought about it that way. Or actually, you're right. Like, we have a lot we can learn from Taylor Swift. So that's an example of, just for me, I love just being in the real world, like going to the theme parks and what did I learn in a given day from a cast member, a team member? What did I experience watching this show? And what does it teach me about business and storytelling? And so that's really my favorite way. It's just the way that I look at the world too. I feel like I'm always trying to like pull stuff out of my experiences as a human being. And so story in that way is my favorite thing to do. And then just really short, simple, as I mentioned, kind of one-liners about, a quote that I heard recently or something I learned that's just a quick hit. It's shareable. It's relatable to people. I love sharing too, just updates and photos of things that I've been working on. That's not as shareable just because it's more relevant to myself. However, it increases my authority and it shows people what I'm working on lately, and hopefully tells people what kind of projects that I can maybe help them with down the road. So there's kind of a balance of different ways I like to approach it.
I love that Taylor Swift style one, because I just had a reel come up from a guy that was like, hey, if I started today and I was trying to get 100,000 followers, I would post 3 videos a day for 30 days. And the notion wasn't because you were going to get a bunch of followers, but the notion was you get so good at posting, you just start thinking in that mentality. Right. As you're going about, you're just like, that would make a good post. That would make a good post. So I think like consistently posting helps you frame your mind so that posts just come easier to you, and you see the world in posts, I guess.
Yeah. Which is not always a good thing, but
Correct.
if
Yeah,
you're coming up with content. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So on that note, because before Social Media Marketing World, which I'm speaking about creating AI images there, I have been kind of doing this self-imposed experiment where I'm posting AI images every day to Instagram. And what they do is hopefully they tell a story, but then I have like the storytelling in the post. Two questions for you. Would that type of post be good for Instagram? And I mean, for LinkedIn? And two, is it okay to repurpose stuff from one platform to another? Because I'm big on doing things once and going everywhere with it. What are your thoughts, Cassie?
Yeah. No, I definitely think so. And my answer to someone saying, would this work on this platform? My answer is always going to be test it and try it and see what lands. Like, I'm a big advocate for testing and learning. And so if you've never tried something before, or you're questioning whether or not it's going to work, test it out. Test it for a month, maybe 3 months. Give yourself a good 60 to 90 day period of just trialing that format. And chances are, you mentioned storytelling in the caption. Storytelling works very well on LinkedIn. So I would say chances are it's going to work out for you. But then in terms of repurposing, a lot of times, yes, the content could be repurposed directly. However, I would just ask yourself quickly, again, how does your audience vary on Instagram versus LinkedIn? Does this speak directly to that audience? Does it need to be tweaked in any way? And just making sure that even if you create a few different iterations or adjustments to that caption, you can post pretty much probably the same exact thing you're sharing on the other platform, but just make sure it's speaking to that audience. So I would say, yes, maybe some slight adjustments, but give it a try.
I will do that. In fact, the first time for the thing the reel I posted on Instagram, I thought, well, Cassie's talking about LinkedIn, I'm going to post it over here. And because I wanted to test the new, the feed, the TikTok-y feed that's in LinkedIn to see how it works. So once again, trying a little experiment.
Yeah, I love it. I'm excited to keep seeing you do that and share stuff out there. Yeah.
Connor, you're muted, buddy. So I'll just say the pollen index is quite bad here. So I'm going through it, but I don't want to hear the sniffles on the mic. I will say the stuff that Jeff comes up with from the mind of Jeff C, that should be your Instagram bio, because all of those AI things, it's just weird. So cool. They're so fun.
It's wild.
They're different. On LinkedIn, I think there's kind of two things people are typically trying to attract, right? You're trying to build your credibility, all that. But if you're working for yourself, you're probably trying to cement yourself as an expert so that you can get more clients, right? On the flip of that, a lot of people will be on LinkedIn more heavily when they're looking for new opportunities, for new job opportunities, right? It's a little touchy subject depending upon if you're currently working for an employer and you want a new opportunity, or if you're not and you're just looking for the next thing that you're going to work on. So Cassie, during a job search, like, what is okay to post? What are some do's and don'ts? What do you think are best practices to, I guess, not come off as, upsetting people that you might have worked for in the past or that you're currently working for, or whatever? What do you just say are some do's and don'ts when you're looking for that new opportunity when it comes to posting on LinkedIn?
Yeah. Well, first things first, whether it's with networking or building your personal brand, I do not recommend just starting when you're looking for that next opportunity. Currently in a present time, if you are good, you love your job, you love what you're doing, start now, because outside of just looking for the next opportunity, building your personal brand has so many advantages. Building your network, there's different things that can lead to. And so I would say start now so that when the time comes to when you need that next opportunity, hopefully you have a great network built on the platform and you can start to kind of do those one-to-one outreaches about finding the next opportunity that you're looking for. LinkedIn has a lot of different tools. Again, if you are searching for a job that you can utilize, I would not recommend putting the open to work profile banner if you are currently employed. So that is one best practice that I would recommend just be careful, like know that you have people that you currently work for or previously work for that are following you. I would also recommend speaking of your past employers in a positive light. I think just overall, people connect more with positivity and people who are kind to others. So that's always something that I recommend too. But I think the biggest thing ultimately is if you start to build this foundation of sharing about your authority and the projects that you've worked on and the impact that you've made in your past experiences, that will stand out to people. And you can use that as a trigger to start building connections with maybe potential brands you want to work with or people you want to work for. And so start that and then also parallel it and combine it with reaching out to new network connections on the platform. And so when that new network connection goes to follow you, they see all of this amazing work that you've done in the past, and it helps boost your authority for a potential role that you're looking for. But again, keep it positive, maybe keep things on a private sector through messages, depending on what you're looking to do and depending on if you're currently employed or not. So just be careful. And I think overall, ask yourself, is this the right thing I should be sharing publicly right now? But overall, just build your authority, focus on that, sharing valuable content, talking about what you've done in the past, and opportunities will come from it.
That's awesome. You mentioned networking a little bit earlier, and one of the things is I didn't go out searching for a network, but it just happened organically, and I think that's kind of the best way because I know cool people. Like I can ask Cassie, like, hey, I need help with my media kit. Oh, Cassie's talked about that. I can ask her, or Connor. How do I get to this restaurant and still make Galaxies, whatever at wherever? He's a great guy for all that stuff.
I think we need to work on what I'm a good guy.
Yeah,
at
you're. I know.
Oh
I was really struggling.
Yeah.
I had to dig deep for that one. So we'll fix it in post. One of the things about that is LinkedIn's algorithm favors engagement. And the one way I was able to network with people is I would just comment on their posts. I wasn't trying to get anything. I was just like, hey, this is really good. Cassie, what you just said there, that really resonated, and ask a follow-up question. So other than that, what are some strategies that you recommend for increasing visibility and interaction on the posts that you're putting out?
Yeah, so a couple things. I think number one, we already talked about this relatability factor. So shareability, like creating content that people would resonate with, especially your ideal followers, the people you're looking to build your network with. And that's going to ultimately help with shareability and just getting your name out there. And when people share your content, that opens the door to new eyeballs on your content and on your profile. And I think the other thing too is don't be afraid to tell people or ask people for specific action in your posts. I mean, I would say don't overdo it. Like in every single post, don't be like, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like you can kind of switch it up and there's different ways to ask for that engagement. But a lot of times when people are reading a post or looking at content, they don't really know that they're supposed to do anything with that piece of content or think about it until they're asked to. So I think thinking about what is, again, the goal of that piece of content and asking for someone to share their own experience in the comments or maybe share it with a friend who would resonate with it. And so test some of those calls to action or CTAs in your copy. And that's going to help with that engagement too. And that goes with any social media platform, right? So I think just overall that, but the relatability factor is huge. And also, as I mentioned, the hot takes are really good for shareability. Like people love to have dialogue and conversation around those. So those will help occasionally too.
Awesome.
I love it. Chris Stone is from Cast Ahead. He's wondering about open to work, but he's more open to work for food. Is that okay? So you on LinkedIn, he gets hungry.
Hey,
I think that's appropriate for two reasons. One,
why
it's
not?
Pie Day, and we have a pie framework we want to talk about, which is great. So Cassie, you've highlighted this pie framework: performance, image, and exposure. Can you just kind of talk about that framework a little bit and kind of dive into how that can help and how people can apply that model to strengthen their own LinkedIn presence?
Yeah. Well, I want to know first if this was intentional, if Jeff planned this on purpose with Pie Day, because it's very fitting.
I did.
Yeah, I love it. No, so the PI framework is essentially this framework for achieving new opportunity, for getting to the next step in your career. And the three categories, so performance in this framework, and this is based off of a book. I believe the author is H.J. Coleman. So he coined this. And essentially the idea is that performance is actually the lowest percentage for achieving that next opportunity. Image as well as exposure are the two biggest categories. And the idea is that image is the way that you're perceived by others. How do you perceive yourself? How do you present yourself? And then exposure is getting in front of the right people. And with LinkedIn specifically, there's all of those factors involved, right? You have this performance to portray, but it's also asking yourself, again, what is my intention for this platform? How do I want to be portrayed? Who do I want to get in front of? And with exposure, it's just making sure you're getting your name out there to the right people. And a lot of times it's those network connections or the people you're exposed to that will potentially lead to that next opportunity. I will say for me personally, a lot of the opportunities that I've landed, I'm very grateful for, but a lot of them have started with me getting exposed to the right people. And so making sure I am putting on the right image, I'm crafting my image in an intentional way so that when I do get face-to-face time with the people that could help me lead to that next opportunity, I'm really landing that. So that's kind of overall. Yes, performance is important. Yes, what you're doing, the work you're doing is huge. But overall, what is that image that you're portraying or your personal brand that you're portraying, and making sure you're getting eyeballs on your stuff by the right people who help land that next opportunity for you.
That's awesome. And then Chris says now he's changed it to open to work for Key Lime Pie because of Pi Day. So that is great. Now it's not anybody on the screen or in the comments, but a lot of professionals hesitate to share content on LinkedIn because they don't think they have anything valuable to say. So what advice would you give those people who struggle with imposter syndrome on what to post on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think ultimately, no matter what level in your career you're at, no matter what level in business you're at, you have a specific, unique story to yourself. And you have something that you can pass along to someone else, whether it's someone one step behind you, people 3 steps ahead of you. You have your own unique story to share and your own unique experience. I get this question a lot from young professionals who haven't graduated college yet, for example. And I always tell them, I'm like, there's people in high school who are getting on the platform. There's people who are looking for advice from someone figuring it out in college. They're a sophomore and they're wondering what's next and what should I be doing now to get myself to the next level. Share that in the weeds experience. Like, you don't also have to have it fully figured out right now, but even just sharing with people, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. What do you think? And starting to strengthen the connection that way. I will also say too, a lot of with imposter syndrome is caring about what other people think. You know, I'm going to say something and someone's going to think this is silly, or I'm not eloquent or whatever. And I always tell people, chances are what other people are thinking about, or what you think other people are thinking about you, is not actually happening. We are our own biggest critics. And so just not being afraid to put yourself out there. And even if you do say something silly, so what? Like, someone's going to forget about it in 2 seconds anyways, and it's really not a big deal. And so I think just owning who you are, I think that confidence takes time to build. But I think also the confidence really comes from knowing who you are, knowing your stuff, you know, building out that image. What do I want to be known for? And really stepping into that and sharing content around that. And you'll start to build connections over time. And it's never too early to start, in my opinion.
That is a great point. Yeah. So we do kind of focus too much on what we do. I totally agree with that. So we're talking today all about LinkedIn if you're just joining us. And by the way, one of the things that we do on LinkedIn is to go LinkedIn Live. And so we're live on there now, which is very, very cool. And we're able to do that with this amazing tool called Ecamm. And I'm doing that right here, being able to pull up comments and everything. Ecamm.com/Jeff. You can save 15% by using code Jeff15 at checkout. And one of the cool things is I just read that even YouTube is now highlighting live more. Like, there was a report that came out last week that they're really starting to push more live content. I think it's because of the rise of AI, and you don't know what's real or not. And I think podcast and this kind of stuff, and where you can talk directly to our audience, is what makes live video so cool. So if you want to do that, you want to learn how to do it on a Mac, you can use Ecamm, ecamm.com/Jeff. And we've got a great comment here really quick. We talked about building your brand just a minute ago by Cassie. And Gary says, I got to say, Cassie has an awesome looking website, such a nicely designed online presence. I'm telling you, all her stuff is good. So make sure you follow her. We've been talking about, and I'm bringing it up for you guys who are listening to the podcast. We actually have right here, Marketing Happy Hour. It's marketinghappyhr.com. So marketinghappyhr.com for you guys listening on the podcast. Go and check that out. Give her a rating and review. That always helps podcasters out.
Live is also great for building connections and building community. That's why we love doing live and seeing people show up. But we also know that LinkedIn is huge for building connections, right? But Cassie, you emphasize that it's not just about collecting connections, right? It's not just about getting to that 500 plus connections on your LinkedIn profile, right? It's about actually building meaningful relationships. I think it can start as easy as what Jeff was saying, simply by consistently commenting on people's posts and engaging with that kind of content, and that connections can form from that. But how do you think professionals should approach networking on LinkedIn to make those real connections, right? Not just those online post, comment, reaction connections, but like meaningful connections where you have a relationship, you can vouch for someone, you can look out for them, and likewise for you. What would you say a good approach for that on LinkedIn is?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, again, we go back to the why. Like, what is the intention with connecting with a specific person? So going back to your goals for the platform, like, what are you looking to do ultimately? Is it to land a job with a specific company, or step into a specific opportunity, land certain clients? And so starting to think about who those ideal connections are that you need to build in order to get to where you're going to go, but also looking at connections and just professional relationships in general beyond that too. Yes, we can maybe have an idea of something we would want to down the road get from that relationship, but ultimately just connecting with people at a human level and connecting with them as you would a friend or a family member, and that goes with intention. And I think ultimately that first touch point should be a little bit more thought out than just a quick connection request, or hey, would love to connect, or hey, buy my product, or whatever. I do not recommend selling on the first touch point ever, like in any circumstance. And we receive so many messages like that on a regular basis. And so really the easiest way just to stand out from the noise is, bottom line, making it personalized. So when you reach out to someone, do your research quickly and just analyze their profile. Is there a relatability factor that you can touch on? Did you all go to the same school? Did they work for a company that you really like? Did they recently collaborate with a campaign that you really loved, and sharing why you loved it? And so telling someone first and foremost why you want to connect with them too, like, what is the goal of that connection? Do you want to learn more about the brand that they work for or their experience? Do you want to hear their story? Do you want to invite them onto your podcast, for example? So using that as more of a soft touch point starting out, and then over time nurturing that connection, and maybe down the road it'll lead to something. You never know, but I wouldn't force it to. I think ultimately opportunities come with just genuine connection with other people and relationships. And even if you're not planning to get anything out of that relationship, bottom line, relationships, as I mentioned, have been a huge piece that have led to opportunities. And most of those opportunities I did not intend to come out of that, but that's what happens when you start to connect with people in an intentional way.
So on that same note, Cassie, my team is one of the producers for Guy Kawasaki's Remarkable People podcast. So that all came from way back in the day. And here we go, Chris Stone and Dustin Stout. Google Plus. I remember, I can trace it all the way back, because I went in there and my friend Peg Fitzpatrick was ran his social media. And I just thought Peg was posting cool stuff. And so I commented on that. Peg and I became friends. We've done stuff together. And then a guy said, hey, I need to do a podcast. And Peg called me up and says, hey, do you know how to do this? I'm like, okay, yeah. And was I thinking that when I first made that comment into Peg's? No, I was just like, hey, this is a cool person. Let's talk. And it developed over time. I mean, like 10 years So these relationships, like you were saying, Cassie, they have opportunities that you don't even think about or fathom at the time. You're just being a human, really, and connecting with people. So I really like what you said about that, because I think it's so important to not to go out for this hard sell right at the beginning. And that leads to another question for you. And Chris has this, and he says, sometimes after joining a LinkedIn Live, I get bombarded from participants in my DMs, feeling like they're trying to sell me something, even though I don't really, quote, know them. Any tips for responding? So how do you handle those kind of spammy requests, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's completely up to you whether or not you respond. First and foremost, like, but do not feel like you have to respond to every salesy request. However, I think it also does show that you're a great human being if you say something, right? And show that you're listening and you respond and engage with your community. So I would even just say something as simple as, thank you so much for watching or listening. We'll keep this in mind for the future. Appreciate you reaching out. Like, keep it super baseline and simple. You don't have to promise anything. You don't have to step into a discovery call for something that you're not necessarily interested in, but just let people know that you hear them and you thank them for reaching out, and just show the appreciation for the consideration. I don't think you really, to be honest, have to say more than that, but I think people just knowing that you're there to listen and to respond to DMs and comments shows a lot about you too.
Awesome.
I think there's also this thing of sending a cold connection request, right? So we want to connect with someone on LinkedIn. I always say you got to do it through the desktop, so you can add in that little personalized message, so that you can show, hey, I know you from X, or this is why I'm trying to connect, versus just getting a random connection that says this person wants to connect with you and no reason at all. What do you think, Cassie, is the best way to not only add that note to reach out to someone new on LinkedIn, but also to get them to respond, right? To get them to say, yes, I'm cool connecting. Like, what's the key to that note and to a cold, quote unquote, connection?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, call them out by name. It shows that your response hopefully isn't always just this templated copy and paste thing. So call them out by name. Make sure you spell their name correctly, because that is definitely important. And I cannot tell you how many times people have reached out to me, and I know mistakes are made, like, things happen, right? But like, take your time to read over the message and make sure you're spelling someone's name right. Show that you care and you're paying attention. And then also too, I really do think that personal tie-in or that relatability feature will help increase chances for responses. So going a little bit deep on that, I know that takes a little extra time when crafting that connection request, but it goes such a long way. And like I said, it really stands out to people when you took the time to pay attention to what they're working on, or what they've done in the past, or what's something that can kind of spark a conversation with them. And so that in and of itself, I think is huge. And so just making sure you're doing that, call them out by name. Hey, Connor. Hey, Jeff. I saw this, or I saw that you posted about AI at a, conference that you just spoke at. Here's why this means something to me, or here's what stood out to me about your post, or I also grew up in Wisconsin, or whatever it is. And so just making sure you tie in that relatability feature, and that helps spark that really human, like, basic personal conversation that then the professional layer of things can build onto that over time.
It's funny because on LinkedIn, my profile is R. Connor Brown. And that was a branding decision, but I also go by my middle name, so I don't want to confuse anyone. But whenever I get a message that says, hey, R. Connor, I'm like, well, this is totally a bot, or it's one of those, sponsored posts or whatever. And I know the personalization has just gone out the window completely. So it's so funny that first thing, just the name itself, is so, so, so crucial.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. A lot of times, like, I'll respond still mostly to people who spell my name wrong, or like, call me a completely different name. I've gotten that too, by the way.
Wow.
Which goes, I'll respond sometimes still, but it just sets that tone for that outreach. Like, you're like, is this person actually caring to connect with me, or whatever? So I highly recommend, just, again, doing your due diligence. Just take a quick second, read over that post, and make sure you're spelling everything correctly too. Just like, setting the tone for professionalism in general. But yeah, it's really important. So,
Yeah, and you probably get this a lot, Cassie, too, because of your podcast. But so many people pitch themselves to be on your show, and you can tell they've never listened to the show at all.
right.
Like, and you're just like,
Right.
come on, like, really? Does this really work? Anyway,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
The last question I want to run by you is, LinkedIn's growing. It's focusing on community and collaboration. So what trends do you see shaping the future of networking on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think, again, the relatability human factor is going to continue to come into play. I think just in general, as we're coming out of the pandemic, or we're out of it now, but people are still looking for that one-to-one connection and feeling like they're seen and heard. And so creating content overall that helps people feel understood or relates to them in some way is really important. And also just going deeper with people, checking in with people on a regular basis. So with connections, for example, not just connecting with them the first time and then never speaking to them again. It's how can you connect with them on a regular basis, maybe once a quarter, check in, see what they're working on, see how they've been. If you see them post about something that they're working on, shoot them a quick message and say, hey, I saw this. Like, this is really awesome. I love that you did X, Y, Z. And so just follow up and, again, intention with each of those relationships are going to continue to be important. And then I think overall, just that surface level reach and bringing new people into your sphere is the storytelling, getting a little bit vulnerable and transparent on the platform, and then going a little bit technically, a big focus on video, especially on LinkedIn too. So sharing more video content, utilizing the new features and the things and the focuses that LinkedIn has on the platform itself, and just paying attention to that stuff. But I think ultimately, relatability, connecting with people on a human level is always going to stand the test of time. And so continuing to focus on that, I think, is going to be really important this year and beyond.
Well, Cassie, this has been awesome. So much great advice. Folks, if you ever have a chance to see Cassie speak at a conference, like she was at PodFest, she's at Momentum, she's amazing. So you guys need to check her out and her podcast. But Cassie, I want to let you tell people where the best place they can find you or what you got coming up, any, giveaways you have. So Cassie, the floor is now yours.
Yeah. Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. First of all, I love talking about LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform. So as you see on the screen, marketinghappyhr.com is where you can find my podcast. But also I'm Cassie Tucker, Cassie Tucker on LinkedIn. Come connect with me there. I do have a LinkedIn post prompts freebie that I'm more than happy to send you. If you send me a connection request on LinkedIn, I'll shoot that over to you. But excited to chat and to learn more about what you're working on too.
Awesome. Connor Brown, what is the amazing, unsinkable Connor Brown up to these days?
Oh, so much. Listen, we're in the thick of spring break, but we got to start thinking, what are we going to do for the summer, right? Where are you going? How can I help? We were talking a little bit before. Cassie is the co-host of the Discover Universal podcast, all about the Universal parks. There's a brand new theme park opening in Orlando from Universal. It's called Epic Universe. It's opening at the end of May of this year. If you want to go, you want to check out all the awesome lands, tickets are on sale, vacation packages are on sale. Reach out to me, Connor, CONOR, at vacationkingdoms.com. Follow me at Vacation Kingdoms across the social medias. Always great. Get in to talk to Cassie. It's the best. We love having you on.
Yes. Thank you so much, Cassie.
Thanks
to our sponsors, Ecamm. You can find out more about them at ecamm.com/Jeff. And we would be able to do this without our amazing audience. Thank you guys so much. This show is so much fun. Fridays are one of my favorite days of the week. Special thanks to Gary, Dustin over at Magi, Chris Stone over at Cast Ahead, everybody who left a comment or a question. This is such an amazing show. And with that, we'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.